Welcome, everyone. My guest today is Lead Analyst Logan Mohtashami to talk about the positive housing data we've gotten over the last week and what that means for 2026. First, I want to thank our sponsor, Trust and Will, for making this episode possible. Logan, welcome back to the podcast.
It is wonderful to be here, Sarah. Very, very interesting tracker weekend and a very interesting 2 weeks for housing too.
Yeah, so surprisingly, I think your headline on the story was, despite economic uncertainty, despite some things we're hearing, with people with sentiment things, demand is up. Housing demand is up year over year and weekly. So tell us about what's going on there.
So this morning, Monday morning, the Mortgage Banking Association came out with their purchase application data for new homes. The last new homes print was a 3-year high. Their purchase application had a slight decline, but their estimates for new home sales for October would be 771,000. That's the upper band of home sales for the new home sales market, of course. And for us, we've always said the housing market tends to perform better when mortgage rates go from 6.64 down to 6. And as long as it stays close to 6 and with duration, it can work. And what occurred in the last 2 weeks is our weekly pending sales data. And our weekly pending sales data is something that looks out 30 to 60 days. So it's not going to be in the existing home sales report coming this, but it is noticeably higher now than last year, up 15% plus back-to-back weeks. The purchase application data itself, the 2-week average positive is, the weeklies are running about 3% plus on the positive side. On the week-to-week side, we had 6%, one slight decline. But the year over year was running at 26 and 31%. So we look at it now, double-digit year-over-year growth on the weekly pending sales, 2-week average. The 2-week average of purchase application data on a year-over-year is running at 28.5%. And now the week-to-week data on purchase application data, the last 2 weeks are positive, average it out. Then you take the last 15 weeks together, 9 positive, 6 negatives on the weekly side. That's you want to get 12 or 14, but also 15 straight weeks of double-digit year-over-year growth. Now, we're going to have an end to the very low comps on the year-over-year data with purchase applications because in a few weeks was starting to see the increase on a year-over-year basis. Part of that is new listings data, but it can work getting down towards 6, right? We've ran 3 years now, right? I made a video over the weekend where we look at housing from 2006 to 2008, and then from 2023 to 2025, how dynamically different these two cycles were in the history of U.S. economics. That's why you need a 3-year test run model now that we're toward the end. But now you start to see demand pick up a little bit with rates basically just moving down to the lower end range of the last few years. The duration is always going to be the key for housing data today, tomorrow, going out for decades. But last year at this time, mortgage rates started to shoot up. You started to impact the demand curve. This year has not been the case. Rates have gone up about almost 30 basis points from the lows, but still it didn't go above 6.64. It is going to be a very interesting 2026 because with the short-term rate cuts that will happen, Powell's going to be gone soon. You're going to have another Fed president. You're going to probably have another Fed member. You're starting to get a group that can even get ARM products sub 6% every single week, every single day out there. So it's a different structure dynamic going out end of this year, but going out also to 2026, as long as that mortgage rates do not shoot up like it has the past few years.
So let's talk about what that demand right now looks like. Does that mean January, February home sales numbers?
We're already seeing existing home sales positive year over year from what we talked about 6 months ago. And 6 months ago, we said the forward-looking demand curve is good enough to be where, and we've said this time and time again, I've probably said it about 700 times, the months of June to October, the reports that'll come out in July and November should be positive year over year because the forward-looking demand, even with rates elevated, was acting a little bit better. So what's happened? The year-over-year growth we've had it in the existing home sales reports. We're going to have an existing home sales report that might have a little bit of delay in closings because of the shutdown, but that gets fixed a little bit later. But now we're starting to get a little bit different data on the weekly side. Boy, if we could have double-digit year-over-year growth on the pending weekly data for duration, you got something more than what we've seen in the last few reports. So last new home sales report, 3-year high in sales. Last existing home sales report was 4.1% year-over-year growth. Our total inventory data peaked around 33%, very healthy. Was what I always talk about, very healthy. That has gone down to 16%. Our price growth percentage basically stopped rising and is slowly ticked lower. Now we're starting to go into the seasonal slowdown in terms of inventory and weekly sales, but you can still have a positive curve going toward the end of the year. As we always talk about in late 2022, we saw that. So good. It's not this, home sales could never rise again. We have an authentic data line that we have proven to be the fact that ties itself to the existing home sales report that eventually catches up to our data line. So that was interesting because last week we had a holiday during the week that usually tilts the data slightly negative on pendants. Didn't matter. Just ran through it. So the week-to-week stuff is going to be a lot more interesting now that the low comps are in time. The low comps are going to go, but it was a very, very positive tracker data line, a very positive week when you take the aggregate whole of positive weekly purchase app, positive year-over-year, positive weeklies on the pending contracts, positive on the year. It's all with a positive theme out there. So a good week.
It is a good week. Let's talk about inventory and new listings, what we saw that there in the tracker, because that was what you highlighted in the last tracker before this one. What did that look like this time?
It's a seasonal decline. It was a slow decline on a week to week. We're starting to get to that November and December. Now, for me, I didn't think we peaked in August, and because we saw our inventory data declined in August. That it's never happened in the last few years. I was suspect of that, but even though the inventory slightly came back higher when I adjust the numbers because of those crazy weeks, it really didn't happen. So the inventory data shifted. Like we always said, who told you the housing market shifted mid-June? Because there are still people out there that are just saying the fall is terrible, nothing's happening. And we just say that. You have to be careful who you listen to out there. A lot of these men are not trained housing analysts. They're not data analysts. They're not economists. They're just a bunch of jackasses with a YouTube account and an iPhone yapping their mouths off. We had one on LinkedIn. I never talk on LinkedIn, and it's just not my thing. But there are people out there that said, "Oh my God, 900,000 homeowners are underwater. Here comes 2008 again." And I just don't really care. But somebody tagged me to it, and I just put all of our housing charts up and just did a yawning emoji. Then a person went anti-central bank crazy. Kool-Aid. This is 2008. Everything. The guy listed this long pair. None of it made any sense. So I said to him, "Okay, homie, let me read your forecast." Yeah, if you're an expert, you probably have years and years of forecasts. So let me read your forecasts and models and let me back test them and see if you know what you're talking about. But what do you not understand? You're a housing expert. You should have forecast models. Yeah, that's what they all do. So you don't have one. I didn't say that. Well, good. I collect all these wonderful, talented men and their forecasts and their names and faces so I could string them out for 20 years. Just let me read yours. Oh, have a nice holidays. Yeah, that's what happens out there.
It is kind of funny to do that on LinkedIn. I will say, just a quick aside, my favorite LinkedIn, I used to follow this person who would just post the craziest stuff on LinkedIn just to see all the bots who would come in and say things. And so he had an AI picture of a cooked chicken in a what do you call it?
Frying pan or those?
No, in the coffee
boiling.
pot.
Okay.
No, in the coffee pot that you get in a hotel room, and there was a rotisserie chicken in it. I don't know how he got this thing, and he put it on LinkedIn, and people lost their minds because bots were saying stuff, and then other people were fooled by it. Anyway, LinkedIn is very funny to me. Can be very funny.
Yeah, it can be funny, but I always say people, you just get their name, get their face, get their 5-year forecast, and let them explain their models. Because now we're at to the point to where a lot of people are saying, well, I didn't say it was going to crash now. I said it would take a long, homie. No. You're the ones who did forecast. We accumulated your forecast. You're off by 29%. I've done these names and their forecasts. You got people who are off 62, 57, 41, 28, 27. I have it all a list. One day there's going to be a glorious day, and you're all going to see the most untalented, ungifted, unsophisticated, not the intellects of our society, housing doers out there, and they are priceless. But for us, we have forecast models, we track weekly stuff, and the thing started to shift mid-June. But there's another story here. It's duration,
Yeah.
Sarah Wheeler. Why do I like the word duration with housing?
Because it's the only way. You have to have some duration for people to act on the mortgage rates.
So 2025 was unique in the sense that the purchase application data showed we have 41 weeks of positive year-over-year growth. When you're working from a very low bar, you have to be careful of percentages, but our new listings data slightly got back to normal again. And we always say that if you are selling your house, majority of sellers, 70 to 80%, are going to be buyers. They have to fill out an application. But that seller who sits there has to need a mortgage buyer to buy that house from him. Then that seller goes and buys another house, and then the transaction model goes. This is why mortgage demand is very key. You can have a bunch of baby boomers sitting there who are qualified to buy a house, but they need somebody to buy their home to move along. That's why the first-time home buyer, the baby boomer, the move-up buyers, that triangular pillar of housing demand works together. We had people ready to go that were sellers. You get mortgage demand picking up. I would say the last 2 weeks, if people were surprised about that growth, it's been a while now. We've had that duration curve in there and rates did not shoot back up this time. So this gives you an idea and a glimpse of what can things look like if you have lower rates for a longer period of time. And we're not talking 3, we're not talking 4, we're not talking 5. Just get down to the low 6s, right? I know the Fed hates that, but still, there's something workable there. And you don't need a 50-year mortgage. You don't need a portable mortgage. You don't need to do the capital gains tax things. Government is just going full blitz mode to try to get the housing market, but just get it a little bit near down to 6. Let it ride. 6% mortgage rates was the rate that crashed the housing market, but now it's like, oh, we can't have rates go down because home prices will go up. And I always tell people, you take 1942 to 225. Home prices went up every single year. Outside of 2007 and 11, we had 2 very small decline years. 1990, 0.7%, and 1991, 0.2%. If you are one of these degrowthers that, we have to destroy the housing market for maybe 10 to 15 years. No, that's not how it works. It's never worked that way. So you could live in an alternative fantasy or you could live in the real world. And there has to be a functioning thing. And this is why I think the next Fed chairman is not going to do what Powell did at the last meeting. What Powell did is right on cue with him. What the Fed hawks are doing right on cue. But there's going to be a change. Now, if the labor market broke, that's a whole different story. Rates go lower by itself. Game on. We're not there. And hopefully we don't get to that point, but that's a whole different conversation.
So you always look for 12 to 14 weeks of positive growth in the purchase apps. Where are we and what part of that do you count and what part do you say, there's some sketchiness there?
So everything is legit. We have 9 weeks, week-to-week data. Basic math, we have 15 weeks of rates under 6.64%. 9 of them have been positive weekly. 6 of them have been negative. We've had some nice week-to-week growth on some of those things. Every single week has had double-digit year-over-year growth in purchase app, but we've always had housing demand pick up in the last few years when we get at least 12 to 14 weeks of positive week-to-week data because you're working from a lower bar. We're not working from the low bar that we had last year. The first half of 2024 was very negative. We had sub 4 million, but we have a little bit above 4 million. So it isn't the lowest bar, but it is something that is workable. And we're about 3 to 5 more weeks of positive data. You got something material there, but it just makes 2026 very interesting, Sarah. You're going to have a new Fed chairman next year. It is going to be the end of Jerome Powell. You're going to have maybe another new Fed governor that is going to be in there. So again, you don't need zero interest rate policy. You don't need quantitative easing. You don't need 3 or 4 just to get things rolling just a little bit. 3 years of data have shown us this out here. And the most positive story again for 2025 is that active inventory grew. National home prices didn't crash. Price growth slowed down. This looks like the 1980s.
Oh, okay. 1980s. That's my decade. You love the 90s. I love the 80s. See?
Well, I was too young to love the 1980s, but
So true. Okay. So, one of the things we're going to get this week is the data from the September jobs report. Is there anything, because we've said, okay, October is just gone. For some reason, we're never going to be able to get that data. That's what the federal government said, but they are going to release the September data, I think, on Thursday. Is there any point at which, is there anything that could say that would lower rates? The bond market goes, oh, it's even worse than we thought, or what do you think the impact there
I
is?
mean, if it's a negative report, now the story is that Goldman thinks the October report is negative 50,000. So but again, what does the Fed come out and say on a September report? Even if it was negative, they're going to say, well, that was September. Things have changed.
Okay.
And I think it'll be much better when we get live jobless claims data. Again, jobless claims data is the key to everything. There's no hiding ifs, ands, or buts. If jobless claims break and the Federal Reserve are still doing the Beth Hammock thing, that fired, get them in there, pack their bags up, pack their stuff, get them out of there, because jobless claims breaking changes everything. So we look at the other data lines. Indeed, had a job openings that slow down. Revlio's monthly report that a lot of people are hanging their hats on went negative. Goldman says the October report was negative. The ADP weekly data went negative. And Neil Kashkari comes, it appears that the economy is very resilient. And it's weird for people to hear this. Like, you see these things, and but again, the Federal Reserve is talking to bond traders. They just kind of like to push back when the 10-year yield got 4%. God forbid, Sarah Wheeler, if people start buying homes, these old cranky men at the Federal Reserve, my God, they won't get any sleep. They're going to have to take more medication. They're going to have they're just going to be so tense and all that. And Bostic is already going to retire in February 2020. Powell's gone. So as Powell once said at a meeting, he was talking about close the bleeping door, because he had some protesters. So we're going to close the bleeping door on some of the people. And now they've found out that Colger's retirement, she did some illegal trading. When I said Bostic had some skeletons in his book, he was going to be the next to go. He left on his own as well. So tides are churning just a little bit. Nothing spectacular, nothing great, but just a little bit.
2026 is going to be very interesting. So I would tell our audience as we wrap up here, you need to register for the Housing Economic Conference. That is going to be in February. Get in soon. We think that's going to be super popular. Of course, Logan is going to be our keynote speaker. We also have you and Barry Habib on stage together. That's going to be great. I'm really excited about that. I think it was Barry's idea. He's like, put me and Logan on stage together, not because you guys have some sort of you're going to have some brawl, but just you follow some of the same data. Sometimes you have different takes. It'll be an amazing opportunity for the audience to ask you guys questions on stage.
Yes,
So
and Mike Simonson is coming there. So I
Mike
get my
Simonson,
I get
huge
my
fan.
nerdy brother from another mother back, and the NAR's economist Jessica Lautz, and Blight's economist Lisa Strodovich is going to be there. So we got a lot. It's always fun having a lot of different people in one day, because you get different
Yes.
takes and different charts and different, because not everyone's going to think the same way, and kind of just go with that.
We also split it up so that you guys aren't covering the same ground. So this person, oh, this is their specialty. We'll have them speak on that. So it's not like you're having those same people talk about the same things. It's going to be amazing. And if you guys have any questions for our unplugged episode, which we're going to be recording this week to go live next week, let us know.
Yeah, ask Sarah and ask Sarah, why is she so mean? Like, what is it? Like, what happened?
Do not ask me why I'm so mean. No, absolutely not. Logan, thank you so much for being on. Really exciting week. We finally get some more Fed data back this week, and we'll go from there. Thank you so much.
Sounds good.